Most men are walking ghosts in their own lives. Picture a room full of people. There is always one man who is hyper-aware of everyone else. He speaks, and halfway through his sentence, someone loudly cuts him off. What does he do? He stops. He forces a polite smile. He physically shrinks. He thinks he is displaying grace. Under the gaze of Machiavelli, this is just a man actively orchestrating his own irrelevance. He has built a prison of politeness, mistaking extreme accommodation for high status. Have you ever been that ghost? You are the ultimate utility, the one they call when there is a crisis. But when it comes to actual respect, you are completely overlooked. You assume your endless utility will convert into power. It will not. It is merely a leash to ensure you keep producing. This is the architecture of the expendable man. But there is a hidden structural lever. Pull it, and the dynamic violently inverts. You stop being a public resource. You become untouchable. This is the blueprint. Let's talk about the exact moment you lose your power. It doesn't happen in a massive, cinematic confrontation. It happens quietly. It happens in the palm of your hand when you reply to a text message 3 seconds after receiving it. It happens when you agree to a last-minute favor that completely derails your own schedule, simply because you could not tolerate the temporary discomfort of saying no. You operate under a fatal, crippling misconception. You believe that being hyper-available makes you indispensable. You think that if you are always there, always reliable, and always ready to sacrifice your own agenda, people will eventually reward you with respect. They will not. They will reward you with more demands. You are actively training the people around you to view you not as a man of high value, but as a public utility. You are a wrench, a hammer, a piece of equipment kept in the dark until it is needed, used until the job is done, and promptly thrown back into the box without a second thought. Nobody respects a hammer. They just expect it to work. When it breaks, they do not mourn it. They replace it. This is the validation trap. You are terrified of losing people, so you over-deliver. You over-explain your decisions because you are desperate to be understood. You think you are building loyalty. You are wrong. You are building unconscious compliance. The human brain is a cold, calculating machine. It operates on the law of supply and demand. Psychology is not about feelings, it is about mechanics. And the most basic mechanical law of human nature is this: we do not value what is infinitely abundant. If your time, your energy, and your attention are available at all hours, their market value drops to zero. You have made yourself cheap. You have become an expendable liability, bleeding out your own status just to feel momentarily accepted. You convince yourself that you are being a good man. Let's dismantle that lie right now. You are not being good. You are being cowardly. You are using your extreme accommodation as a covert contract. You are secretly hoping that if you give enough of yourself away, the world will be forced to give you the validation you cannot give yourself. Power requires friction. Without friction, there is no perceived value. Think about the physical architecture of a bank vault. A vault requires codes. It requires keys. It requires a time delay mechanism. It has incredibly high friction. Because it is difficult to access, everyone inherently understands that what is inside is highly valuable. Now look at a revolving door at a shopping mall. No resistance, no barrier. Anyone can walk in and out without a single thought. When you continuously offer your time without demanding an equal exchange of respect or resources, you are a revolving door. You destroy your own structural leverage. People simply do not respect what they can summon without effort. They will cancel plans on you at the last minute. They will show up late to your meetings. They will talk over you in conversations, and they will do it without a shred of guilt, because you have taught them through your own actions that your time costs absolutely nothing. The Roman philosopher Seneca understood the brutal physics of this dynamic centuries ago. He watched the elites of Rome exhaust themselves running from obligation to obligation, trying to please the mob and their peers. His conclusion was cold and absolute. A man who belongs to the public completely ceases to belong to himself. Read that again. If everyone has unlimited access to you, you do not exist. You are just a collection of favors waiting to be cashed in. When Seneca advised his students, he didn't tell them to be cruel. He told them to be scarce. The man who guards his time is perceived as a man who has an asset worth guarding. So, how do you fix this broken machinery? You do not throw a tantrum. You do not write a long, emotional paragraph explaining that you are finally taking time for yourself. That is weak. Weak men announce their boundaries because they are desperately seeking validation for them. Dangerous men enforce their boundaries quietly. You must execute a surgical dismantling of your own availability. You recalibrate your structural leverage by introducing strategic distance. You delay your responses. You let the phone ring. You say no without offering a 5-minute apology. When you justify your decisions, you are handing over your authority. You are begging them not to be mad at you. Stop explaining. Stop justifying. Just decline. Let them sit in the silence of your absence. Let the sudden lack of access do the heavy lifting. The moment you pull back, the system will feel the friction. They will realize that your presence is a premium asset, not a free public good. People will be confused at first. Then, they will be frustrated. Finally, they will adjust. They always do. You are going to draw a line in the sand today. Drop a comment right now and type the words, "I am no longer a public utility. My access is restricted." Lock that identity in. Claim your sovereign territory. But restricting your physical access is only the first move on the chessboard. You can lock your door, put your phone on silent, and isolate yourself from the noise of the external world. But none of that matters if your internal architecture is already rotting. What happens when the enemy isn't outside your door? What happens when the voice demanding you to stay soft, stay compliant, and stay weak is coming from inside your own head? Let's shift the focus. You have just restricted your access to the outside world. You have locked the door. You have turned off the phone. You are finally alone. But what happens when the enemy isn't standing outside your door? What happens when the architect of your own destruction is living right inside your own skull? Most men are completely obsessed with external tactics. They want the psychological hacks. They want the negotiation scripts. They want the precise combination of words to make other people respect them. They are trying to install a heavy steel vault door on a house made of rotting wood. They are building their ambition on a swamp. And then they act shocked when the entire structure collapses the moment real pressure arrives. Before you can hold leverage over a business partner, a spouse, or an adversary, you must audit your own internal mechanics. The greatest enemy you will ever face in your life is not the man sitting across the table from you. It is not the market. It is not your boss. It is the version of you that consistently chooses the warmth of comfort over the cold, brutal friction of discipline. Machiavelli viewed human behavior strictly through the lens of warfare. He understood statecraft, and he understood the deeply flawed minds of men. He established a fundamental, unbreakable law of conflict. A man who cannot govern his own instincts is a man who is already governed by his opponent. Think about the brutal logic of that statement. If you cannot even say no to your own impulses, to the urge to scroll for hours, the urge to sleep in, the urge to numb your anxiety with cheap dopamine, how on earth do you expect to say no to a skilled manipulator? You cannot. You will fold. This internal enemy is incredibly dangerous because it does not attack you directly. It is highly cunning. It speaks in your exact voice. It uses your own logic against you. It weaponizes your old wounds, your past failures, and your sheer exhaustion to sabotage your potential. It doesn't tell you to quit completely. That would trigger your ego. Instead, it tells you to wait. It whispers that the timing simply isn't right. It tells you that you have suffered enough today, and you deserve a break. It convinces you that resting is the strategic move. Let's examine the anatomy of a micro-surrender. The alarm goes off at Kong AM. It is dark. It is cold. In that exact fraction of a second, your mind instantly generates a dozen perfectly rational excuses why you should stay in bed. I worked late. I need physical recovery. One day won't matter. In that split second, you are at war. When you hit the snooze button, you are not just getting more sleep. You are establishing a behavioral precedent. You are officially starting your day by breaking a contract with yourself. You are teaching your brain that your own commands are strictly optional. And if your own commands are optional to you, why would anyone else take them seriously? And the brutal truth? You listen to that voice. Every single day, you surrender your sovereign territory to your own excuses. You mistake your hesitation for wisdom. You mistake your fear of discomfort for patience. This is a critical, structural failure. You become a hollow asset, a man who looks the part, who wears the right clothes, and says the right things, but who snaps under the slightest psychological torque. When a real crisis hits, your logic dissolves, and your emotions take the wheel. You must stop viewing self-mastery as some spiritual journey or a motivational phase. Motivation is a scam. It is temporary fuel for men who are already lost. You must treat self-mastery as a mechanical necessity. It is the load-bearing pillar of your existence. Cold, calculated, ruthless. You must execute a full audit of your own behavioral mechanics. Every single habit that softens you must be identified and surgically removed. Every excuse that protects you from discomfort must be stripped away. You do not negotiate with your own weakness. You do not compromise with it. You dismantle it. Where are the cracks in your foundation? Where are you bleeding discipline? Is it the mindless consumption of content designed to hijack your attention? Every time you choose the easy path, you are actively degrading your own structural leverage. When you feel the discomfort of discipline, do not run from it. Lean into it. Recognize it as the exact mechanism of your growth. When you win this internal siege, everything changes. The external world simply falls into place. You stop reacting. You stop panicking. You walk into a room with a completely different frequency. You no longer need external validation because you have already stress-tested your own architecture behind closed doors. You know exactly what you are built for, and more importantly, you know exactly what you will no longer tolerate. You can win the internal war. You can forge a mind of iron. But the moment you step back outside into the world, the environment will attempt to pull you back down. The people who were comfortable with your old, weak version will not attack you with anger. That would be too obvious. Instead, they will use a far more sophisticated, invisible weapon to force you back into submission. They will attack you with guilt. Let's talk about the most effective, invisible weapon used against men today: guilt. Society has weaponized guilt to keep capable men incredibly small. Think about the language people use when you finally decide to put your own needs first. You have changed. You are being selfish. I thought I could count on you. These are not expressions of genuine hurt. They are tactical pressure points. They are linguistic levers pulled by people who are actively losing their grip on your time and energy. They tell you that choosing your own growth over someone else's comfort is cruel. It is a lie. It is a calculated psychological operation designed to keep you completely docile and endlessly accommodating. Prioritizing yourself is not selfishness. It is the absolute highest form of structural self-preservation. If you do not prioritize yourself, you automatically become a resource for everyone else's agenda. You become the ultimate utility player in a game you are not even allowed to win. Let's look at the brutal economics of your relationships. You skip your own training to help a friend move. You drain your financial reserves to bail out a family member. You stay late to fix a coworker's catastrophic mistake. And the darkest part? You actually believe this makes you honorable. You believe that by bleeding out your own resources, you are securing their loyalty. You are completely deluded. You confuse their access to you with affection. They are not loving you. They are consuming you. You give and you give until you are functionally empty, and then you are quietly discarded by the very people you sacrificed yourself for. Why? because nobody respects a depleted battery. Once you have no more energy to offer, you are no longer useful to their blueprint. This is not loyalty rewarded. This is weakness exploited. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus understood this dynamic perfectly. He defined the ultimate sovereign not as the man who commands armies or controls empires, but as the man who has established absolute tyranny over his own internal resources. He understood a very cold law of human nature. A man who does not own his time, his attention, and his energy is a slave, regardless of his tax bracket or his job title. If you cannot aggressively defend your own priorities, you do not own yourself. You are merely renting yourself out to the highest emotional bidder. This brings us to the physics of prioritization. You must examine your value in the marketplace of life. Are you easily replicated? Be ruthlessly honest. If the next guy can do exactly what you do, agree to exactly what you agree to, and tolerate exactly the level of disrespect you tolerate, you are operating at a permanent deficit. You are a generic component, a replaceable cog in the machine. If you are easy to replace, you have absolutely zero structural leverage. You will spend your entire life reacting to the demands of people who hold the actual power. You must engineer yourself into a structural monopoly. What does that mean? It means you upgrade your operational baseline to a level that makes replacing you a mathematical nightmare. You train your mind to see angles others miss. You build your body so your physical presence commands a room before you even speak. You sharpen your competence until you are the only logical solution to a high-stakes problem. You develop an emotional baseline so cold and precise that when a crisis hits and everyone else is panicking, you are the only one calculating the next move. You do not demand attention. You do not beg for a seat at the table. You make yourself mechanically irreplaceable. Irreplaceability through elite excellence is the ultimate leverage. When you become a monopoly, you stop asking for respect. The environment is forced to adjust to you by default. Think about the friction of replacement. If losing you causes massive, catastrophic friction in their system, their business, or their social dynamic, they will treat you like a premium asset. If losing you causes no friction, they will treat you like a cheap commodity. It is simply the physics of value. Stop apologizing for wanting to be the dominant force in your own life. Stop letting emotional vampires dictate how you spend your finite hours on this earth. Prioritizing yourself means protecting your time with the ferocity of a man who knows exactly how fast the clock is ticking. It means cutting off any habit, any environment, and any person that consistently pulls your energy downward without a tangible return on investment. But building this architecture requires a specific, highly disciplined, behavioral shift. You cannot build a monopoly while constantly broadcasting your blueprint to the public. You cannot become an untouchable asset if you are busy running your mouth and explaining your process to people who want to see you fail. You have built the leverage. You have established the value. Now, how do you protect it from being dismantled by predators? You shut your mouth. Let's talk about the exact mechanics of silence. Most men misunderstand this concept completely. They believe that silence is passive. They think silence is an absence of action, a retreat, or a sign of submission. They believe that if they are not speaking, they are not asserting their power. This is a fatal miscalculation. Silence is not empty. Silence is an incredibly aggressive, highly calibrated asset. It is the foundation of opaque architecture. To understand why silence is so dangerous, you must first change how you view communication. Stop looking at psychology as a collection of feelings. Look at it as mechanics. In the arena of human behavior, communication is not about emotional connection. It is about data transfer. Every single time you open your mouth, you are transferring data about your internal architecture to the environment. You are revealing your preferences, your insecurities, your emotional baseline, and your strategic intentions. You are handing over the source code to your own psychology. When you over-explain yourself, you are not building understanding. You are handing the other person the exact blueprints required to dismantle you. Let's look at a highly relatable example. Someone invites you to an event you do not want to attend. A weak man says, "I really wish I could come, but I have this project at work, and my car is acting up, and I'm just feeling a little tired today. What did you just do? You handed them 3 distinct levers. Now they can argue with your data. They can say, you can do the project tomorrow, or I'll pick you up, or come out, it will energize you. You gave them the ammunition to negotiate your boundaries. A dangerous man simply says, I cannot attend. Period. No data transfer. No levers provided. No leverage surrendered. Why do men babble? Why do they feel the desperate need to fill the void of silence with endless streams of words? Because they cannot tolerate the friction of the void. Silence creates psychological pressure, and weak men crack under that pressure. They suffer from an agonizing need for validation. They believe that if they just explain their reasoning well enough, the other person will finally validate their choice and absolve them of guilt. This is a massive signal of low status. The moment you justify your choice, you automatically elevate the other person to the position of a judge. You are placing yourself on trial, and you are begging them for a favorable verdict. Strategic minds and historical predators understood this dynamic perfectly. Robert Greene, analyzing centuries of power dynamics, recognized a cold law of physics. The transparent man is the easiest man to conquer. If your enemy knows your exact position, your fears, and your desires, you are entirely predictable. Greene advised his readers to always say less than necessary. Mystery generates involuntary respect. People cannot manipulate what they cannot understand. When you restrict the data transfer, you force the environment to guess, and human beings are terrified of the unknown. This brings us to the tactical application of weaponized silence. You must build an opaque architecture around your intentions. In any high-stakes interaction, a negotiation, an argument, or a moment of disrespect, the physics of power dictate that the one who speaks the least controls the framework of the interaction. When you restrict your words, you create a psychological vacuum. Imagine someone throws a subtle insult at you in a meeting. The natural, reactive instinct is to defend yourself, to snap back, or to explain why they are wrong. Do not do that. That is exactly what they want. They want to see if they can press a button and generate an emotional output. Instead, utilize a dead-eyed, unbothered silence. Do not break eye contact. Do not change your facial expression. Just look at them. Let the silence stretch out for 3, 4, 5 seconds. Let the weight of that silence crush them. What happens? The vacuum you created will begin to suck the oxygen out of their confidence. Because they cannot read your reaction, their own insecurities will project onto your blank canvas. They will begin to sweat. They will break eye contact first. They will nervously chuckle, backpedal, or try to over-explain their own insult to relieve the unbearable friction of your silence. You broke their frame without uttering a single syllable. You won the engagement through the sheer mechanics of restraint. You must stop broadcasting your next move. Stop telling people your goals. Stop explaining your past. Let them observe your results. An opaque man is a structural black hole. He absorbs information from the room, but emits nothing that can be used against him. But silence is only an effective weapon if the fortress behind it is completely secure. You can shut your mouth and refuse to transfer data, but what happens when they bypass your silence? What happens when they find that one specific trigger, that one deep psychological wound, and strike it with pinpoint accuracy? A silent man who is secretly boiling with rage is not powerful. He is a bomb waiting to detonate. How do you prevent your internal architecture from shattering when the emotional strike actually lands? Let's address the precise moment of impact. You have mastered your silence. You have restricted your availability. You are operating as an opaque architecture. But predators are persistent. They will probe your defenses. They will test the perimeter until they find a structural crack. And what is the most common, catastrophic structural crack in a man's foundation? Emotional reactivity. Most men believe they are in control of their emotions. They are not. They are simply existing in a comfortable season where their emotional baseline has not yet been severely tested. Give a man real pressure. Give him a sudden financial loss. Give him public humiliation. Give him betrayal from someone he trusted. Watch what lives beneath the surface of his polite composure. Watch how violently his logic dissolves when anger, fear, or wounded pride takes the wheel. Watch how quickly a man who believed himself to be highly disciplined begins to lash out, making permanent decisions based on temporary feelings. This is not a character flaw. It is a mechanical vulnerability. Predators, manipulators, and toxic individuals do not care about your logic. They are scanning you for emotional triggers. They are looking for the exact psychological button they can press to bypass your reasoning and hijack your operating system. Think about the people in your life who have successfully provoked you. Think about the arguments where you lost your temper, raised your voice, or sent a furious multi-paragraph text message to defend yourself. Now, understand the brutal reality of what actually happened in those moments. Every single time you reacted emotionally to disrespect, you handed that person the psychological leverage over you. You showed them exactly where you are weak. You revealed the precise pressure point that makes you abandon your own strategy, and they filed that data away. Consciously or unconsciously, they now hold a map to your destruction. They know that if they need to distract you, discredit you, or control you, all they have to do is apply pressure to that specific wound. You become a puppet. They pull the emotional string. You dance. You surrender your sovereign power to satisfy a fleeting urge to defend your ego. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who commanded the greatest military force on earth, faced endless betrayals, plagues, and wars. Yet, his private journals reveal a man obsessed with his own internal mechanics. He operated under one absolute, unbreakable law. A man who is easily provoked is a man who can be easily controlled. He understood that anger is not a display of power. Anger is a surrender of sovereignty. If an adversary can dictate your emotional state, they are your master. So, what is the strategic correction? How do you neutralize a direct emotional strike? You must develop emotional containment. Do not confuse containment with suppression. Suppression is what weak men do. They shove their anger down. They bite their tongues and pretend they are not hurt. They become a walking pressure cooker, functional until the exact moment they inevitably explode and destroy their own lives. Containment is entirely different. Containment is an elite cognitive function. It is the ability to feel the full, crushing weight of an emotion, the burning anger, the sharp sting of disrespect, the heavy dread of anxiety, and consciously choose your response, rather than unconsciously surrendering to your reaction. It is the mastery of the space between stimulus and action. When someone insults you, disrespects your boundaries, or tries to drag you into their chaotic drama, you will feel the adrenaline spike. Your heart rate will increase. The urge to react will be screaming in your head. Do not move. Take a breath. Create a pause. In that specific, terrifying fraction of a second, you must ask yourself one cold, calculating question. Does my reaction serve my strategic vision, or does it serve my wounded ego? Those are the only two options available to you. You are either executing your blueprint, or you are abandoning it to chase a feeling. The dangerous man chooses the blueprint every single time. He becomes a black hole for provocations. When they strike, he absorbs the impact. He processes the emotion as raw data, not as a command. He looks at the manipulator, registers their attempt to destabilize him, and feels absolutely nothing but cold, clinical calculation. You cannot manipulate what you cannot destabilize. When they realize their attacks generate zero emotional output, they will retreat. They will look for an easier target. You must lock this architecture into your operating system right now. Drop a comment right now and type the words, "I am the architect of my own leverage. I react to nothing." Make that declaration your permanent baseline. You have now fortified your internal structure. Your emotions are contained. Your silence is weaponized. Your availability is restricted. You are operating as a structural monopoly. But there is one final vulnerability. The most dangerous threat to your new architecture is not inside your head. It is sitting next to you. What happens when the inner circle you trust is silently engineering your decline. Let's talk about the architecture of your inner circle. There is an uncomfortable, brutal truth that most men spend their entire lives trying to avoid. The people you surround yourself with are not neutral. They are never neutral. They are either an accelerating asset or they are an invisible ceiling. They are either pushing you toward a higher baseline or they are silently engineering your decline. It does not happen dramatically. It happens quietly, over years of shared meals, casual complaints, and weekend habits. It happens with a precision that only becomes visible when you look back a decade later and realize you are still standing in the exact same place. You must understand the absolute physics of proximity. Energy is contagious in both directions. You do not just absorb the habits of the people closest to you. You absorb their relationship with risk. You absorb their tolerance for mediocrity. You absorb their deeply ingrained beliefs about what is possible and what is strictly off limits. If the people closest to you have low standards, a permanent victim mentality, and a deep, comforting relationship with average results, no amount of personal discipline will fully protect you. Their baseline will become your ceiling. It is a gravitational pull. It is physics. You cannot outwork a toxic environment. Many men are trapped by a fabricated, socially engineered concept called loyalty debt. You believe that because you shared a dorm room 10 years ago, or because you went through a rough patch together, you owe them unlimited access to your present life. This is a fatal structural miscalculation. Gratitude is owed for the past. Access is earned for the present. You can fully appreciate someone's history without allowing them to contaminate your future. If a man is actively dragging your energy down, refusing to grow, and mocking your discipline, he is an anchor. You do not owe a drowning man the right to pull you under. Look at your circle right now. Evaluate them with the cold, unforgiving eyes of an auditor, not the nostalgic heart of a people-pleaser. How do they react when you mention a massive new goal? Do they hold you to a higher standard, or do they immediately offer you excuses in case you fail? Pay close attention to the subtle undermining, dressed up as humor. Look who thinks he's too good for us now. Why are you working so hard? Just relax and have a drink. They disguise it as friendly banter, but it is a precise psychological mechanism. When you start winning, when you start upgrading your architecture, you make their own stagnation painfully visible by contrast. Your growth becomes a walking insult to their comfort zone. They do not want you to succeed because your success forces them to confront their own laziness. So, they apply friction. They try to pull you back down to the median so they can feel safe again. Machiavelli was absolutely ruthless about this dynamic. He wrote extensively on the company a leader keeps. He warned that a prince who surrounds himself with weak counsel, flatterers, and men who value their own comfort over the truth is a prince who is already in the process of falling. He simply hasn't hit the ground yet. The very first display of a man's intelligence is the quality of the men he keeps around him. If you tolerate weak, complaining men in your proximity, it means you secretly tolerate the weakness inside yourself. You must execute a proximity audit. It is time to purge the friction from your system. Identify the emotional vampires in your life. The victim, the man who always has a tragedy, always blames the world, and demands your energy to validate his misery. The saboteur, the man who buys you a drink the night before your most important meeting, because he wants you to be as hungover and average as he is. The taker, the man who views your resources, your time, and your connections as his personal emergency fund. You must remove them. But how do you execute this removal? You do not create a theatrical confrontation. You do not sit them down and explain that you are leveling up. That is dramatic, and drama is the language of the weak. The dangerous man executes his boundaries in absolute silence. You simply withdraw your access. You replace proximity with purpose. You become completely unavailable for mindless gossip. You decline the invitations that lead nowhere. You let the relationship starve from a lack of oxygen. When you raise your standard, the composition of your circle will inevitably change. It will be deeply uncomfortable. You will experience a season of isolation. Embrace it. Isolation is not a punishment. It is the quiet, highly secure room where your new architecture is built. Seek out men who are building. Sit in rooms that make you feel like you need to grow just to keep up. You have now purged the final liability. Your internal foundation is solid. Your emotions are cold and contained. Your circle is a fortified asset. You have dismantled the expendable man. But there is one final step. What happens when this fully calibrated architecture steps out into the real world? What is the final, undeniable form of the man no one can ignore? The transition from an expendable resource to an untouchable sovereign is not a motivational event. It is a permanent structural recalibration. You have completely dismantled the machinery of the compliant man. You understand the validation trap. You have weaponized your silence, contained your emotional reactions, and ruthlessly purged the friction from your inner circle. You no longer walk into a room desperately scanning for approval. You occupy space with the heavy, undeniable gravity of a man who requires absolutely nothing from the environment. Understand this. People will be deeply uncomfortable around this upgraded version of you. They will miss the old, highly accommodating puppet they used to control. They will call you arrogant. They will accuse you of being cold, distant, or changed. Let them. Their discomfort is not a flaw in your design. It is mathematical proof that your new boundaries are generating friction. Do not apologize for their inability to manipulate you anymore. This is the final form of the man no one can ignore. Not because he is loud, not because he performs for the crowd or flexes his ego, but because his internal architecture is impenetrable. When he speaks, the room listens, because every word has been calculated and backed by extreme competence. He does not chase respect. He forces it through the sheer weight of his structural monopoly. He is a ghost to manipulators, a black hole for provocations, and a fortress for those truly worthy of his proximity. The master strategist Sun Tzu recognized this ultimate state of power. He wrote that supreme excellence consists of breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. By mastering your own psychological architecture, you defeat their manipulation before a single word is spoken. You win the war simply by existing as a structure they cannot dismantle. But human nature is lazy. The gravity of your old life will constantly try to pull you back down into compliance. The moment you lower your defenses, the moment you start over-explaining yourself to seek comfort, you will begin to bleed status. You will slide right back into the invisible cage, functioning as a disposable utility in another man's blueprint. The predators will return. The disrespect will resume. The code is now in your hands. This is not a philosophy to ponder. It is an operating system to execute daily. If you are ready to lock in this architecture, hit the subscribe button for Leverage Doctrine. We do not deal in hope, healing, or motivation. We deal in the cold, hard mechanics of human nature. Stay sharp, remain opaque, take the leverage.